Before taking her own life, my best friend sent me a message with a picture. The river water is so cold. Goodbye forever. I followed the location in the photo, rushing over to the river and jumping in to save her. Just as we were about to grab the life ring thrown by a passerby, she suddenly pushed me away. Sophie, I'm pregnant. The baby is your husband's. I don't want my child to be an illegitimate child living in the shadows. She climbed onto the life ring and was successfully rescued, while I, exhausted, sank into the water. As I was pulled ashore, barely clinging to consciousness, I heard her crying in an interview. She risked her life to push me towards the shore. She wanted me to live on. I can't let her down. I will live well for the rest of my life, to take care of her daughter and husband. At that moment, my 3-year-old daughter was lying on my lifeless body, sobbing so hard that it tore at the hearts of those around. Mommy? I just want my mommy. I only want my mommy. For the sake of a heartless woman, I had left my daughter motherless. Once my so-called best friend gave birth to her child, it was hard to imagine that she wouldn't mistreat my daughter, becoming a wicked stepmother. I died full of resentment, but heaven had mercy. When I opened my eyes again, I had returned to the moment I received my best friend's farewell message. Looking at the familiar photo on my phone and the words, "The river water is so cold. Goodbye forever," I realized I had been reborn. At that moment, my daughter was curled up in my arms, her soft little voice urging me, "Mommy, what happened to the prince and princess in the story?" Ignoring the message, I tossed my phone aside, tucked my daughter in, and smiled. The prince and princess got married and had an adorable little angel just like you. As for whether the prince later cheated on the princess, how could I bear to tell my 3-year-old daughter such a thing? Satisfied, she gave me a sweet kiss. "Good night, Mommy." "Good night, Lily." I gently closed her bedroom door and swore in my heart, no matter what, I would stay far away from danger and protect my daughter until she grew up safe and sound. This time, I wouldn't jump into that river again. Let Emily put on her performance alone. I wanted to see how she would carry out her act without me. In my previous life, I had replied instantly to her message, telling her not to act impulsively and to wait for me. She had timed her jump so that I would arrive just in time to save her. Now that I ignored her message, my phone rang. "Sophie, did you see the message I sent you?" I walked onto the balcony, lowering my voice. "No, I was putting Lily to sleep." "What's wrong?" She hesitated on the other end. "Nothing. I just wanted to call and say goodbye." Pretending not to hear her clearly, I said, "The signal's bad. I can't hear you well. Lily's at home, so I can't leave. If something's wrong, call Michael." In my past life, I had rushed to the river with my 3-year-old daughter, only for her to witness me drowning with her own eyes. This time, let Emily call my husband instead. After all, she probably didn't know that my husband was currently in a hotel bed with another woman. In my past life, if I hadn't rushed to save her, I had originally planned to send my daughter to my mother's place before heading to the hotel to catch my husband cheating. Hearing me tell her to call Michael instead, Emily froze on the other end of the line. After all, I had never told her to contact him before. In fact, whenever we were together, she would deliberately avoid mentioning him. That was how it had always been. I didn't give her a chance to say anything else, using the bad signal excuse to hang up. I knew my husband was cheating, but I never knew that he had been cheating with her, that she had even gotten pregnant with his child. For 3 years, I had been a full-time wife. Apart from my daughter, the 2 closest people in my life were Michael and Emily, and today, I received 2 life-shattering messages. One was from an unknown number, containing photos of Michael and his assistant getting a hotel room together. The other was from Emily telling me she was devastated over failing to complete her PhD and wanted to end her life. At the same time, I discovered their betrayal. Maybe it was because I had already died once before, but at this moment, I felt surprisingly calm. I began thinking rationally about how to minimize the damage to my daughter and secure the best outcome for both of us. I dialed the unknown number that had sent me the photos. No one answered. A moment later, a message arrived. "Don't ask. I'm just a morally upright person doing a good deed. If you come to room 5006 of the Moreland Hotel now, you'll still make it in time. They're still inside." I couldn't leave my daughter alone at home. but I also wanted to confirm the truth with my own eyes. More importantly, I needed evidence of his affair. It would be crucial in my fight for custody. Luckily, I knew the assistant and had her husband's contact information as well. That unknown number from earlier wasn't the assistant's husband. I guessed it was probably someone from Michael's company who had a grudge against him. Michael was an executive at a publicly traded company, and most of the tasks the CEO couldn't personally handle were left to him. He was essentially the boss's right-hand man. But in a company like that, internal power struggles were fierce. Since someone was exposing Michael's affair to me, they were likely planning to take him down from within, using me, his stay-at-home wife, as a pawn in their scheme. I couldn't act recklessly right now. Any misstep could interfere with my next move. I called the assistant's husband and told him that his wife was drunk and making a scene, urging him to come pick her up from room 5006 at the Moreland Hotel. Then, I made another call to my younger brother. I told him to stake out a spot near the hotel room and record everything he saw, but not to reveal himself. As long as he got footage, that was all that mattered. While waiting for my brother's video, Emily called me again. Twice. She repeated the same sob story, how her professor was blocking her thesis, how she couldn't graduate, how she was in agony and had decided to end her life. She begged me to come see her one last time, saying that if I arrived too late, I'd only be in time to collect her body. This time, I didn't pretend there was a bad signal. Since she was so eager for attention, I figured I'd let her suffer a little first. I told her to wait for me and that I'd be there in 5 minutes. Then I opened my phone and started scrolling through local news on social media. Sure enough, 5 minutes later, a trending post popped up, right near my apartment complex. A woman suspected of attempting suicide jumped into the river. After splashing around for a while, she seemed to regret it and swam to shore, grabbing a life ring thrown by a passerby and pulling herself out. I knew it. She had timed her jump to coincide with when I would have arrived. In the video, she struggled in the water, coughing and choking, gulping down mouthfuls of river water. A bystander considered jumping in to save her, but was stopped by someone else, who said to wait until she was too weak to struggle. Otherwise, she might drag them down with her. But she couldn't keep up the act for long. Before anyone could step in, she gave up on the performance herself. She flipped onto her backstroked to the shore, then clung to the life ring and let someone pull her up. Once on land, she was coughing so hard that she nearly threw up bile. It looked like she had gulped down quite a bit of river water just to make it look convincing. She was determined. She had done all this just to get rid of me and marry Michael. She was even willing to be this ruthless to herself. The video ended with her lifting her head and looking off into the distance. Even after vomiting and looking completely drained, there was a venomous glint in her eyes. She was looking in the direction where I was supposed to have appeared. Drowning isn't fun, is it? A message notification popped up on my screen. My brother had sent me the video. I quickly opened it. In the footage, Michael and his assistant had just walked out of the hotel room, only to be met with a furious ambush from the assistant's husband. The man was livid, throwing punches left and right. Michael and the assistant cowered, trying to shield themselves as they ran. The assistant's husband was a taekwondo coach, so Michael got the worst of it. His face took several direct hits, but the man still wasn't satisfied. He grabbed a takeout bag and shoved it over Michael's head before landing another punch, this time through the bag. Then he turned and yanked his wife by the hair, dragging her away. The camera shook violently, and then, suddenly, a foot appeared in the frame, kicking Michael right between the legs. A blood-curdling scream erupted from him. I recognized the shoe on that foot. I had bought those for my brother. After the video ended, my brother called, fuming. He ranted about Michael for a full 10 minutes, barely giving me a chance to get a word in. Eventually, he said he was coming to pick me and Lily up. That gave me the opening I needed. No need. I have my own plan. Just sit back and enjoy the show. I hung up. At that moment, I heard the sound of the front door unlocking. Taking a deep breath, I composed myself, plastered on a gentle smile, and turned to greet the man stepping inside. Honey, you're back. Michael barely glanced at me, tilting his head away, trying to avoid my gaze. He attempted to brush past me and head straight for the bedroom. But how could I let such a golden opportunity slip away? His face was bound to be a masterpiece right now. I grabbed his face with both hands, forcing him to look at me, and feigned concern. "What happened to your face?" His face was a disaster. Bruises and swelling everywhere, dried blood at the corner of his mouth. He looked like he had just been used as a punching bag. "A taekwondo black belt, huh?" I mused. Michael cursed under his breath. Then, in the most unconvincing tone ever, he muttered, "It's nothing. Just some guy at work. Fired a director yesterday, and today the guy ambushed me in the parking lot after our meeting." I took an ice pack from the fridge and handed it to him for cold compression, showing the same considerate attitude as always. "Honey, your boss at work is really something. Always making you play the bad guy but won't even assign you a bodyguard? This job is way too tough on you." Michael let out a heavy sigh. "Tell me about it. The things I do for him. If luck isn't on my side, I could be the one taking the fall." That was exactly what I was waiting for. If he was already considering the risks, he must have thought about an exit plan. I played along. "Maybe we should move abroad then. But, living overseas isn't cheap. Lily's education alone will cost a lot." Michael thought for a moment before replying. "How about this? While the company's stock price is still high, I'll sell off my shares and cash out. You can manage the money properly, invest some in stable financial products, and leave a portion for me to start a business. I probably won't last much longer at this company anyway." That was exactly what I had been waiting for. Before becoming a full-time wife, I worked at a securities firm. After quitting, Michael handed over all our bank cards to me so I could stay home without worry. Using my expertise, I had managed our family assets, ensuring they grew steadily at an 8% return per year. Michael trusted me completely when it came to finances. And I had patiently played my role, just for this moment, the moment he decided to cash out. Once the money from his stock sale arrived, I immediately liquidated all our investments. Then, I split the funds into two parts. One went into purchasing high-value insurance policies for Lily. The other was used to buy 10 prime location properties in top-tier cities nationwide, all under Lily's name via gift deeds. To complete these property purchases, I took Lily on a 3-month trip across the country. During this time, I ignored every call and message from Emily. After 3 months, her pregnancy was no longer something she could hide. The bigger her belly grew, the harder it would be for her to get an abortion. The longer time dragged on, the more desperate she became. And now, she was completely losing control. The moment Lily and I returned, Emily came straight to me. "Sophie, you know everything now, don't you?" She stood in front of me, belly slightly showing. She had been posting pictures of herself and Michael all over social media while I was away, making sure I saw everything. Today, she was here to make things official. That day, I really wanted to die, but then I thought about the baby. The baby is innocent. I couldn't be so selfish and take my child with me. You probably think I'm shameless. You don't understand why, despite how kind you've always been to me, always thinking of me, even when buying yourself something, I still went behind your back and slept with Michael. She looked at me earnestly and continued, "Sophie, Michael doesn't love you anymore. He said ever since you became a housewife, you've become dull and uninteresting. He feels like he can't connect with you anymore. So even if it wasn't me, it would have been someone else. Since you're going to step aside anyway, why not let it be me?" Even though I had already lived through this once, hearing her say those words again made my blood boil. I grabbed the coffee in front of me and threw it straight in her face. "If you already know how shameless you are, why are you still trying to justify it?" I hissed. "Your child is innocent? When you were sleeping with Michael behind my back, did you ever think about my daughter? Is my daughter not innocent?" Emily wiped the coffee off her face, and then she laughed. "If enduring a cup of coffee is what it takes to be with a high-quality man like Michael, then so be it." High-quality man? Money truly is a man's greatest charm. I wondered, if Michael lost both his money and his job, would she still see him as such a prize? I was ready to start preparing for our divorce, but given the current circumstances, I needed Michael to be the one to propose it first. That way, I would have the upper hand in the settlement. I needed to control the narrative. If I filed for divorce first, I could always threaten to withdraw my request. Michael could afford to wait, but Emily's pregnancy couldn't. I decided to start with my mother-in-law. After all, Michael had always been the perfect filial son. No matter how much she made things difficult for me in the past, he would only say, "She's my mother, she's your elder. Just endure it and it'll pass." This time, I would use her favorite tactics, crying, making a scene, and threatening to take drastic action to push Michael into divorcing me first. I carried a gift and went to my mother-in-law's house. Before I even stepped inside, I heard her bragging to her group of friends. "Let's be honest, my son makes a lot of money. All I want now is a grandson. There's no way all this wealth should go to some little girl as a dowry, only for some outsider to benefit from it later." Sophie is as stubborn as a mule. She gave birth to a daughter and then flat out refused to have another child. "Tell me, what's the point of a woman if she won't give birth to a son?" She sighed dramatically. "I told my son's mistresses that as long as they give me a grandson, I'll make sure they can enter our family properly. And now, a PhD student is already 4 months pregnant. We even had it checked. It's a boy. A smart one too with those genes. I'm finally going to have a grandson." Then, she lowered her voice. "Of course, we're keeping this from Sophie for now. Michael is trying to send her and Lily abroad first. Honestly, I don't know why he's bothering with all that effort. Just divorce her already. But my son is too soft-hearted. He says Sophie has been with him for years and even gave up her career, so he feels bad divorcing her, just like that. But if he kicked her out and married the PhD student, who then gave birth to a big, healthy grandson, I'd be so proud." Emily probably never expected that after all those years of education, the only thing people valued about her was her womb. I pushed the door open, staggering in as if the sky had just collapsed on me. The gift bag in my hands slipped to the floor, and my whole body trembled as I stared at my mother-in-law in shock. "Mom, what did you just say? Michael is marrying a PhD student?" I gasped, clutching my chest as if I were on the verge of collapse. "No wonder he's been pushing me to take Lily abroad. It's because he's having an affair. Mom, what am I supposed to do? I'm not leaving the country. You have to do something." As I spoke, my eyes landed on the kitchen knife on the table. Without hesitation, I grabbed it and slammed it down onto the dining table. If this family can't have both of us, then either he dies or I do. My mother-in-law was so terrified that she dropped her phone to the floor. "Sophie, let's talk this through. Put the knife down." Watching her, the same woman who had tormented me for 4 years, now cowering in fear, I finally understood. Tolerance and patience meant nothing to people like her. Reasoning with them was pointless. The only way to deal with them was to be even more aggressive and unreasonable than they were. Cornered against the wall, my mother-in-law trembled, her lips quivering as she stammered, "Sophie, calm down. Think of Lily. I promise, I'll talk to Michael. I'll make him come to his senses and treat you properly." I put down the knife and walked out. The moment I stepped outside, I heard her grabbing her phone and screaming at Michael over the phone. "You have to divorce that woman. She found out about the affair and just lost it. She nearly killed me." From that day on, my mother-in-law never dared to come to my house again. However, Michael, who had been using work as an excuse to avoid coming home for days, suddenly returned. The scent of Emily's perfume still lingered on his clothes. Rubbing his temples, he sighed in frustration. "Sophie, can't you just turn a blind eye like other women? I provide you and Lily with a good life. You can live comfortably abroad. What's wrong with that? Why do you have to make such a scene? Do you think this is dignified? Are you happy now that you've forced us into a divorce?" So in his mind, this whole situation was my fault. He thought he had done nothing wrong. Expecting a man like him to take responsibility for his own mistakes was nothing more than a fool's dream. Good thing I never intended for him to admit his faults. I played my role perfectly, signing the divorce papers with a reluctant and heartbroken expression. I even made it look like I was giving up, agreeing to let Lily's custody go to me without a fight. During the mandatory 1-month divorce cooling-off period, Michael never came home again. He said he was giving me a month to find a place and move out with Lily. I took Lily and moved into one of the 3-bedroom apartments under her name. I enrolled her in a nearby preschool and hired a nanny to pick her up and drop her off. A month later, I officially received my divorce certificate. Then, I applied for a position at Michael's company and got hired as an assistant to his biggest rival, director Zach Taylor. It didn't take long for me to figure out that the unknown number that had sent me the photos of Michael and his assistant in the hotel room belonged to Zach. The first time Michael saw me at the company, his brows furrowed sharply. "Sophie, I gave you a chance, but you insisted on making a mess. Now you regret it and want to cling to me? Too late." I calmly stepped back beside Zach and responded politely, "Mr. Carter, I just started at the company. I'm Mr. Taylor's assistant now." A flash of irritation crossed his face. He looked at Zach with a sneer. "What, are you collecting trash now? Picking up what I've already thrown away?" Before Zach could say a word, I stepped forward, grabbed Michael's shoulders, and swiftly kneed him in the groin. "If your brain is as useless as your lower half, you might as well get rid of both." Michael's face twisted in agony. I showed no mercy, landing a solid punch right across his contorted face. Colleagues rushed over to watch the commotion. I dusted off my hands and smiled. "Sorry, just settling some divorce issues. Nothing to see here. Move along." A female colleague leaned in and whispered, "Everyone here hates Michael and his assistant, Jessie. Watching him get beaten up, we're loving it. Jessie and her husband divorced too. Now, everyone's waiting to see when Michael and Jessie will get married." Jessie got tricked into divorcing too? Well, she probably had no idea that Michael's wedding to Emily was scheduled for next Saturday. The wedding was kept extremely low-key. No one from the company was invited, not even Jessie. So, I did her a favor. I took the wedding invitation that my former mother-in-law had posted on social media and forwarded it to Jessie and most of Michael's colleagues. It wasn't easy. I had to add them one by one from the company's internal contacts. The task kept me busy for half a day. To make sure everyone could attend, I even rented 2 charter buses and arranged for the employees to be taken directly to the wedding venue. The venue itself was a mess, clearly thrown together at the last minute. Michael and Emily stood at the hotel entrance, greeting guests. Emily, now over 5 months pregnant, stood beside him, looking every bit the proud bride. My former mother-in-law was beaming, holding on to the hands of her friends. This is a first-time bride, and she's carrying a son, a PhD student too. My son really hit the jackpot. She was basking in the admiration of the guests, until her eyes suddenly landed on me, stepping off one of the charter buses, followed by a crowd of Michael's colleagues. Her smile froze. I walked up to them, smiling sweetly. "I'm Emily's best friend. How could I miss her wedding?" My former mother-in-law's face twisted in fury. "Sophie, don't you dare try to ruin my son's wedding." Michael and Emily noticed me too. Their expressions tensed immediately. They really didn't need to treat me like some kind of major threat. I wasn't here to cause a scene. I just couldn't stand to see them happy. I was here to enjoy the show. And soon, Michael realized that I wasn't the real problem today. Because Jessie had just stepped off the second bus, blending into the crowd of colleagues, a devilish smile on her face as she headed straight for Michael and Emily. Emily, oblivious to what was happening behind her, stood tall, looking at me like I was a bitter, defeated ex-wife, on guard against my supposed revenge. But while Emily was busy keeping an eye on me, Jessie had already slipped through the crowd, walking straight up to her. And with one forceful shove, she sent Emily sprawling to the ground. Michael and my former mother-in-law's faces turned ghostly pale. They rushed forward to grab Emily, but it was too late. She lay there, flailing like a flipped-over turtle, limbs flapping helplessly as she struggled to get up. Emily was stunned. She stared at Jessie in complete confusion, instinctively clutching her stomach. Michael and my former mother-in-law panicked. They didn't even have time to yell at Jessie. They were too busy scrambling to lift Emily off the ground. My former mother-in-law chanted prayers under her breath. "Please, please, let there be no complications. As long as there's no bleeding, the baby should be fine. Thank heavens." Michael held on to Emily and turned to Jessie, shouting, "You homewrecker. You couldn't get pregnant with a son, and now you have the nerve to come ruin my wedding? Get lost." But Jessie ignored him. She kicked off her heels, grabbed one by the sharp heel, and lunged at Emily's face. I already got divorced. You really think I'd let you have your happy ending? Keep dreaming. It was only then that Emily realized Jessie was yet another one of Michael's mistresses. Her face instantly went pale. The two of them started clawing at each other, neither willing to back down. Over 100 employees from the company had come to watch, just like me, enjoying the show. Michael shouted at the stunned crowd, "What the hell are you all standing there for? Help me break this up." Just as he finished speaking, there was a sharp yelp. Jessie had kicked Emily hard in the stomach. A deep red stain spread quickly beneath the hem of Emily's wedding dress. My former mother-in-law took one look and fainted on the spot. Michael's face turned red with panic. He didn't even care that Jessie had scratched bloody marks all over his face. He shoved her aside with all his strength. Jessie's head slammed into the corner of the gift table, and blood immediately gushed out. The whole wedding descended into chaos. Some guests started calling ambulances. Some rushed to check on my unconscious former mother-in-law. A few of Michael's co-workers, who had been bullied by him at work, even took advantage of the confusion. One of them stuck out a foot just as Michael tried to carry Emily to the car, sending them both tumbling face first into the ground. Zach stood beside me, watching with satisfaction. "I knew I wasn't wrong about you. When you make a move, you make sure it's a big one." Michael had made a fool of himself in front of over 100 colleagues. It wouldn't be long before the company took disciplinary action against him. I unhooked my company ID badge and handed it to Zach. "Mr. Taylor, goodbye." He let out a dry laugh. "You're just going to use me and toss me aside?" I smirked. "What else did you expect, to keep me around for Christmas?" We both knew why he had hired me, and we both knew why I took the job. Now that we'd both achieved our goals, there was no need to keep up the charade. All I wanted now was to take Lily and start a new life. But I never expected Lily to suddenly disappear. The nanny who picked her up called in a panic, saying she had gone to the preschool as usual but couldn't find Lily anywhere. The teacher told her that Lily had been taken away by her grandfather. I immediately called both Michael and his father. Neither of them answered. I called over 10 times. No response. I rushed to both Michael's house and his father's house, pounding on their doors, but no one answered. Forcing myself to stay calm, I reasoned that Michael was most likely at the hospital. Emily's baby was the family's most prized possession. They wouldn't just abandon her. I sped to the best maternity hospital in town, and sure enough, I saw Michael's entire family outside a hospital room. Lily was in my former mother-in-law's grasp, her little wrist being yanked with force. The moment she saw me, she burst into tears. Mommy, Grandma's hurting me." Then, right in front of my eyes, my former mother-in-law slapped Lily across the face. "If my grandson doesn't make it, you'll pay with your life. If a mother sins, the daughter must pay. You think I don't know this was all your mother's doing?" From the moment I left the preschool, I had been telling myself to stay calm. But the second I saw her hit Lily, I lost it. She could hit me. But no one was allowed to lay a hand on my daughter. I turned and grabbed a handful of disposable syringes from the nurse's station, ripped open the packaging, and charged straight at her. "Lily is your granddaughter. How could you do this to her? I'll fight you to the death." Michael was terrified of needles. He didn't dare come near. His father lunged to snatch the syringe from my hand, but I slashed across his face with it, leaving deep red marks. As for my former mother-in-law, I had no idea how many times I stabbed her. Tiny beads of blood dotted her skin. If she weren't a woman, I would have torn her face apart like I did to Michael's father. She let out a scream just as the medical team wheeled Emily out of the examination room. Thanks to the timely medical intervention, Emily's baby had been saved. My former mother-in-law immediately shoved Lily away, shoving her straight into my arms. If it weren't for the fact that my grandson is safe and I want to do good deeds for his sake, I'd skin both of you alive. Get lost and don't ever show your faces around my family again. I hugged Lily tightly, wiping her tears. "Don't be scared, baby. Let's go home." Lily reached out her tiny hand and gently touched my face. "Mommy, don't cry. I'm not scared." At that moment, my brother arrived at the hospital. He was ready to beat the life out of Michael, but I stopped him. Don't, you'll go to jail for someone like him, and it's not worth it. Just as we were about to leave, Emily suddenly called out to me. Sophie? Can I talk to you for a moment? I told my brother to take Lily home first. Inside the VIP hospital suite, it was just me and Emily. She remained silent for a long time before finally speaking. Sophie, can you forgive me? I know it was wrong to betray you and get involved with Michael. But you never told me that he had other mistresses either. So let's just call it even, okay? Can we go back to being best friends? She forced a smile. Lately, I've been thinking about all the memories we shared. I really don't want to lose you. I had no idea why she was saying this now. Yes, we had shared good memories. Times when we supported each other through our lowest points. When we bought books for each other, just because we knew the other would like them. But she was also the person who had once been willing to let me die. I couldn't ignore the possibility that she had an ulterior motive behind these words. I stayed calm and simply said, "There's no going back." Then I gave her a piece of advice. You've seen Michael's true colors now. Get out while you still can. Emily suddenly burst into tears. Sophie, it's not that I don't want to leave, but I'm already 5 months pregnant. I couldn't bring myself to have an abortion. I haven't even finished my PhD yet, and my research paper has hit a dead end. If I don't marry Michael, I won't be able to support this child on my own. I don't have the energy to raise him alone. Her voice trembled. At least if I marry Michael, the baby will have financial security. Sophie, tell me, besides Jesse, who else has Michael been involved with? I looked at her, unimpressed. I don't know, and I don't care anymore. I had no interest in wasting any more time on them. I also knew that Michael was never coming back. The only reason Emily was suddenly playing weak in front of me was to get more information. But I didn't tell her what I knew, that Michael was about to become a penniless nobody. As time passed, Lily and I settled into a new rhythm. The properties under Lily's name had all been successfully rented out. I also leased a plot of land in the countryside and turned it into a family-friendly farm, where parents and children could come and enjoy the outdoors during vacations. One day, an old acquaintance visited, Zach. He brought his wife and daughter to my farm for a family experience. His wife and daughter were busy in the fields, carefully picking seedlings to transplant. Zach, wanting to join in but also afraid of getting too much sun, was playfully pushed into the shade by his wife. You just pay for everything and let me and our daughter handle the rest. Watching them, Zach's face was full of happiness. So, there really are happy families, he mused. Not everyone is lucky enough to have one, though. Then he casually dropped a bombshell. Did you hear? Jessie got into a car accident. She's still in the ICU. I nodded. I had already seen the news on short video platforms. Zach continued, Actually, 2 of Michael's other mistresses have had accidents recently too. Your ex-best friend, she's got quite the methods. I wasn't surprised. The police haven't found any solid leads? Not yet. But if Emily really did plan these, she's frighteningly good at covering her tracks. I already knew how ruthless Emily could be. After all, she had once orchestrated my death. Back then, I had admired her determination, her relentless drive, but later I realized just how terrifying it was when someone like her had no moral limits. Zach sighed. You should be careful. Before he could finish his sentence, my phone rang. Michael. The moment I picked up, he started screaming. Sophie, are you out of your damn mind? Why is there not a single cent left in my bank accounts? When we signed the divorce papers, Michael had taken back all the bank cards, locking them away in his safe. He had even checked all my investment accounts to make sure they were empty. What he didn't know was that I had already used all the money in those accounts to buy properties and insurance under Lily's name. The only bank card he still had money in. Well, between his wedding and Emily's hospital bills, it must have been drained dry, which was why he had finally gone to check his safe. And now, he had realized, there was nothing left. His voice was hoarse with rage. Where the hell did all that money go? Emily's about to give birth, and I can't even afford the damn hospital deposit. You better give me my money back, now. I chuckled, my voice light and unbothered. I'm not an ATM, Michael. I don't spit out money on demand. I ignored Michael's furious yelling on the phone and hung up without hesitation. Afterward, I turned to Zach. Has the company fired Michael yet? He's so broke now that he can't even afford Emily's hospital deposit. Zach chuckled. They fired him a long time ago. Plus, his reputation in the industry is completely ruined. No one will hire him. He leaned in slightly. That's why I told you to be careful. Knowing you, I figured you wouldn't leave him much money. So that's how it was. Honestly, they weren't completely destitute. My former mother-in-law wanted a grandson so badly that even if she had to sell their house, she'd make sure that child was taken care of. Sure enough, 2 days later, she proudly posted on social media, celebrating the birth of her precious grandson. The comments were flooded with congratulations. A month later, I received a court summons. Michael was suing me, claiming that I had used marital assets without his consent to purchase properties under Lily's name. He was requesting the court to nullify the transfers and force me to return the funds. I hired the most well-known divorce attorney in the field. I also handed over all evidence of Michael's affairs to my lawyer. When Emily heard about the lawsuit, she showed up at my farm in a cab, despite still being in postpartum recovery. She broke down in tears in front of me. Sophie, I know I was wrong. I admit that I lost, but can you think like a mother, just for once? Please at least give Michael half of the money. Don't let my son be born into poverty. She sobbed harder. Sophie, I grew up poor, and I was terrified of it. I can't let my child suffer like that. Please don't push us into a corner. Just leave us a way out, okay? A way out? Did she forget that she was the one who never left me a way out in the first place? I stared at her coldly. Drop the act. I'm not the same Sophie who used to fall for your tears and give in to everything you wanted. Emily wiped her tears, her expression turning bitter. You'll regret this. I didn't even blink. After she left, my former mother-in-law showed up next, screaming and wailing at my doorstep. Lily is just a worthless little girl. Why should she inherit our family's wealth? Even if we have to sell everything we own, we'll fight this lawsuit to the end. You'll return every last cent. I pretended to pour her a glass of water, then dumped an entire basin of cold water over her head instead. She left, drenched and humiliated. She wasn't bluffing. Michael really did sell their house. He also hired one of the best divorce attorneys to fight the case. They were putting everything on the line for this lawsuit, but the case wasn't difficult to win. In the first trial, the judge ruled in my favor. My lawyer explained that parental gifts to children are extremely difficult to revoke. The only reason this case even went to court was because the amount of money involved was significant, giving the other side false hope that they could win. But I had posted all of Michael and Emily's deeds online, and public opinion overwhelmingly supported me and Lily. Social pressure played in my favor. Unsurprisingly, Michael and Emily refused to accept defeat and filed an appeal. However, before the second trial could even take place, Emily was arrested for attempted murder. Coincidentally, she had just finished breastfeeding, meaning there was no excuse for bail. When the second trial was finally held, Michael lost again. With no home, no job, and no future, he couldn't handle the blow. That same day, he climbed to the top of the tallest building in the city and jumped. As for Emily, she was found guilty of multiple murders and was sentenced to death, execution to be carried out immediately. Michael's parents were devastated, but they couldn't afford to die. They still had an infant grandson who needed them to survive. To them, I had only 2 words to say. You deserved it.